أشرقت نفسي بنور من فؤادي حينما رددت يا رب العباد.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. So apologies for the little break that we had in between. I think my health took a turn for the worse, so I became really sick. I couldn't do the dars last week, but alhamdulillah, Allah is merciful and very kind. So alhamdulillah, we're back with the dars today, inshallah. So last time we started Uhud, and we're going to get underway with Uhud inshallah today, but just a quick recap. Can someone tell me what were the economic reasons why Uhud was something impending and something that had to be done? Anyone? Okay, so okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to screen share. I have some interesting things to show you today, inshallah. I was really hoping that more people attend, because I was going to try and give you guys a bit more of a visual idea of, how Uhud took place, but we will also touch a little bit on Badr. Okay, so let me do this. Can everyone see my screen? Okay, I can't see the chat box anymore. Actually, one second, let me just see. Okay, so you can all see the map that I'm sharing, right? Yes. Okay, great. All right. Now, so let me just go back to basics. Okay, so as you can see, we are in the Middle East. Yes, and you just follow my cursor. Yeah, so this is Medina, and as you can see, this is Mecca, right? And Medina is to the north of Mecca. Yes, and you can see that on this end is Yemen, and on this end is the area of Sham, right? We have Jordan, Lebanon, all these places, Syria, yeah? And you can see that they had these two journeys that they would make, right? One to the north in the summer towards Sham, and one to the south in the winter towards Yemen, right? And what they would do, as we said, is the reason that their caravans are being intercepted on this end here. So you can see that if this is Medina, if I zoom in a little bit more, this is Yambu, and very close to this on this side is Badr. Let me see if I can zoom in some more. Okay, it doesn't show up. The name Badr doesn't turn up despite expanding, but you'll just have to take my word for it. You can look up on other maps, inshallah. But so basically, this is the area. Around this area is where Badr is. So you can see that when they are going from Mecca up towards Sham, they have to go through this area. And the Prophet ﷺ, he is sending out people to this area to intercept these caravans, their trade caravans, right? And what they started doing then is they said, okay, this isn't working because this is where our caravans are being intercepted, so we can't carry on. So they said, we are going to go from here all the way around this way and then go up towards Sham. And then the Prophet ﷺ, he intercepted it in this area as well. And so you can see that they have tried to come up with two alternative trade routes, but they have to go through this area to get to Sham, and both of them are being intercepted. So you can see that their economic, you can say their economic bloodline or emissary or whatever however you want to call it, is being cut off by the Muslims, right? So this is strangulating their economy, okay? And they need to somehow eliminate the Muslims or exterminate the Muslims so that they can continue trading, because their livelihood and their life basically depends on their trade and on their trade routes. So this was the economic reason why they had to try and come up with a way to exterminate the Muslims, and that would have to be through fighting. Okay. Politically, the Quraysh were very strong, and what is happening is that they are losing clout, right? So the Prophet ﷺ, you can see he is expanding his domain around Medina. So he's making allies and ties with, the tribes around Medina. And after Badr, the Quraysh have lost a lot of reputation, name, strength, things like that, right? People are thinking that it's not them who are the heroes, it's the Muslims now who are the heroes. And so they have a political reason as well now to try and attack the Muslims and to try and win this time, to re-establish their name and their reputation in the community. Okay. All right. Just a second. Okay. So, I'm going to come back to this a little later, inshallah. Okay. All right. It would be nice if some of you can try and answer some questions so that I know that I haven't been just speaking to myself. All right. Just go back to my notes. Can anyone remember and tell me the Prophet ﷺ, he held a meeting, because remember he is in Medina, and while they are preparing this army in Mecca, who is it who sends a messenger with this information that the Quraysh are preparing an army to come and attack Medina. Does anybody remember? Okay. So this person, to remind you, to jog your memory, was a Muslim, but nobody knew at this point about his Islam.
It's Prophet Uncle Abbas.
Yes, very good. Yes, that's right. So it was Al-Abbas, and he sends a messenger, and he sends him with utmost speed, right? So this messenger, he gets to the Prophet ﷺ in 3 days, and we said that the journey between Makkah and Medina was approximately at a normal pace. How long would it take?
10 to 16 days.
Yes, it would take about 2 weeks, and if you really, sped things up, it could take about a week, and then this man was able to do it in 3 days. So he goes and he informs the Prophet ﷺ, but the Prophet ﷺ, he doesn't just take his word for it. He sends his own men to go and see if anything is going on. And sure enough, they find out that the Quraysh are, marching towards Medina. And so then he meets the head of the one of the leaders of the Ansar, and then he has a meeting with all the Muslims, and he takes their advice as to what to do. So what is the advice he's given? So there are 2 opinions, right? Can anyone tell me what they are? If you're shy to talk, you can write in the chat box. I'm trying to keep an eye out for that as well. So one of the opinions that is the Prophet ﷺ's own opinion, as well as that of Abdullah ibn Ubay, is that they stay in Medina and they fight from Medina, and they use Medina as a fortress, right? And then the other opinion is that of the younger Sahaba, who a lot of them who missed Badr, and they say that no, we're not going to be humiliated by allowing them to come into our city and into our homes, and rather we will meet them outside. And so they say that we should have this battle outside, and we should go there, and we should let them come and meet us outside and have a proper full-blown combat with them. And so the Prophet ﷺ, he goes in and he starts putting on his armor, and then they change their mind and they feel guilty that we've gone against the wishes and the decision of the Prophet ﷺ. And so then they send Hamza radiallahu anhu to go and tell him that we'll go with your decision. And he says, I've already put my armor on, and now we will go ahead with what we decided. So we said that this was a good thing for a leader to do, to be decisive and to be clear and certain on what he wants to do, and not to waffle between one thing and another, because that takes away the confidence of your followers as well. So so they decide to go. The Prophet ﷺ, he decides to go up to Uhud. All right, and we said that they used a guide who took them to Uhud through another path, not their regular path, because the Quraysh now are very close to Medina, and the Prophet ﷺ did not want to give them a chance to spot the Muslims or the Muslim army moving towards where they want to go, and wait for them for combat. And so they go through some agricultural land, and if you remember, we mentioned it belonged to a blind munafiq, and he curses the Prophet ﷺ and doesn't allow him to pass, but they still walk through that land. So they don't want to go through the regular route because they could be spotted. So they go through an obscure route and they get to Uhud, and that's where the Prophet ﷺ is planning to camp, to set camp. Okay. Now, the Prophet ﷺ, we talked about why he selected Uhud. Okay, so I'm just going to screen share again. So now we're going to zoom in to Medina so that I can show you, give you a better idea. Okay, can you see this little white square here? And by the way, can everybody, let's open the chat box again. Can everyone see the screen before I carry on?
Yes.
Yes? Okay, great. Okay, so if you can see here, this little white square kind of thing, this is the haram. Okay. And it's interesting, you know, I mean, this is like a satellite view of Medina, and, you know, the hadith that talks about Dajjal, it says that when he comes, you know, he will say that that is the White House of Ahmad. And at that time, it was not white, but now because of the construction and the ceramic and all the colors that they've used, it looks white on from satellite view. So that is the haram. And at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, the entire city of Medina was, like we said, it was around as big as the Masjid al-Nabawi. On this side is Quba, which was another sort of district or area, because you can see it's quite far. And this mountain range, if you can all see where my cursor is, this is Uhud. And like we said, Uhud is not just one mountain, it is a range of mountains. And you can see that now current day Medina, which is like about all of this, you can see the mountain range is almost the size of Medina. So it's quite a big mountain range. Now, if we zoom in further, okay. So what the Prophet ﷺ does is he goes out of this area, which is where this, you know, their homes are, or this is where they live, right? And he goes all the way across, straight across to Uhud. This would have taken about an hour, a couple of hours, right, by foot. And if you can see this enclave here, where I'm pointing my cursor. Okay, so this entire range is Uhud, and the Prophet ﷺ, he camps here in this area, and you can see why he chooses this area. So he has the mountain on this side, the mountain behind him, and the mountain on this side, right? So the mountain is basically protecting him on three sides. Let's just zoom in a bit more, and a bit more. Okay. So you can see that there is mountain here, mountain behind him, and mountain on his right and his left. The only area which is open is this area here. And in right sort of like in the midst of this open area is this little hill here. Can you see this? Where my cursor is? Let's zoom in a little bit more. And a bit more. Does this look like a small sort of hill or mountain? So the Prophet ﷺ is camping here, right? And there's mountain here, mountain behind him, mountain on both his sides. This is the open area. And this is that hill which was called Jabal Ainain, which today is known as Jabal al-Rumah, right? The the Mount of the Archers. And this is, you could say, like their weak area. So if they are here, this area you could see is a bit sort of like unprotected, right? So he strategically places 50 archers on this hill to cover this open space, okay? And again, this is his military genius, and he very strategically only leaves this area to fight in, which is between this mountain, this is still Uhud, right? And this hill. So you can see there's this space here where they will launch the offensive, right? And it's a very narrow space. So why do you think this is something clever on the part of the Muslims to select Uhud and to select this little space to fight in? Anybody? What do you think? How do you think this is going to benefit the Muslims? So just to give you an idea again, the Muslims were about 1,000. And then if you remember, Abdullah bin Ubay and the hypocrites, they defected, right? So there's about a third of them were with Abdullah bin Ubay. So now there's about 700 Muslims left. And on the side of the disbelievers, they're over 3,000, right? So the ratio is not great, right? They're almost like almost 1-4, yeah? So there's about 4,000 on the side of the kuffar and about 700 on the side of the Muslims. How does this narrow space, how is this an advantage? Yes, very good, Sandra. So what happens is that because the space is narrow, now it doesn't matter how many thousands the disbelievers are. Because of the space, there's only a few of them at a time who can come and engage in combat. So they can be their troops can extend this way, but where the Muslims are engaging, you can only have a few of them at a time. And that's good and advantageous for the Muslims because, you know, that's what they can handle at that time. So this is again, you know, this is something very, very strategic and clever that the Prophet ﷺ thinks of. And remember, he doesn't have much time for planning or thinking, right? This is all happening so quickly. He just receives this messenger. He finds out they're about 2 days away now. He has to have meetings within Medina with the Ansar to decide, you know, how they want to go about this. And, you know, and then immediately they need to come here and they need to decide how they're going to do this. So there's very little time for them to do this. So this was just to give you an idea of, you know, yes, that's right. He doesn't have the advantage of satellite images either. So you can see that, you know, when he comes towards Uhud, he can already see that this is the best place because it protects us from 3 sides, leaving this side open. And then if he keeps, you know, people on this hill is of course much smaller now. At that time it was like at least 5 to 6 times bigger than this, but it's like eroded over time, right? So you have this big mount, little sort of a little bigger than this mount over here. So this gives them some protection, and this is where, you know, this is the area where they launch the offensive and they fight. Later on we'll talk about, you know, what happens when the people on this mountain leave their positions and how this becomes an area of weakness. And we'll discuss that as we move along. All right. So I hope that has given you better idea of, you know, what's going on during this battle. All right. Now, Okay, so the Prophet ﷺ, he is now, as we said, some people have defected and left the ranks, and there's about 700 of them left now. And out of those 700, another 2 tribes are also considering leaving the ranks of the Muslims. However, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he inspires them and gives them support, and so they decide to stay. And Allah says in the Quran, إذ همت طائفتان منكم أن تفشلا والله وليهما وعلى الله فليتوكل المؤمنون. When 2 parties among you were about to lose courage, but Allah was their ally, and upon Allah the believers should rely. So basically, this was a negative thing for these tribes to think of leaving and defecting or retreating, right? But Jabir ibn Abdullah, he said, I wouldn't hope that this didn't happen, because Allah revealed the ayah that He is our ally. So basically he's saying that just for that reason, just for them to have this privilege of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala being their ally, they are glad that they considered leaving, so that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed something about them, and Allah revealed something good and something positive about them, and that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala supported them. So the Sahaba, they would concentrate and focus a lot on these kind of situations, and they would love to benefit from these situations in this way. Okay, a lot of people come and offer help at the time of this battle, and the Prophet ﷺ, he refuses them for different reasons. So, for example, the Jews came and offered help, and the Prophet ﷺ, he refused their assistance, and he said, we don't need the help of disbelievers. And the Prophet ﷺ, he also turns away some Sahaba who have tried to sneak into the ranks, but they are underage. Some of them are well-known Sahaba, such as Abdullah bin Umar, Usama bin Zayd, Zayd bin Haritha, Zayd bin Thabit, Abu Sa'id al-Khudri, Zayd bin Arqam. Some of them, for example, Usama bin Zayd, he was only 11 or 12 years old at the time of this battle, and this was their age, and they were very, very keen on fighting, even though they were so young at the time of this battle. There was a couple of Sahaba by the name of Rafi ibn Sa'id and Samura ibn Jundub. They were 14 years old, and they argued with the Prophet ﷺ and insisted that they wanted to fight. So Rafi said that he was very experienced in archery, and that they could benefit from his skill. And then they reasoned with the Prophet ﷺ and said that since he was going to be shooting arrows, he could be placed at the back, and he didn't have to be in the front line, and he could still participate and he could assist the army. So the Prophet ﷺ agreed. Samura bin Jundub, he becomes very upset, and he says to the Prophet ﷺ that I have a better skill set than Rafi. So if you're going to let him stay, then you should let me stay. And so Samura says that he has better physical strength, and he is good at wrestling, and he has beaten Rafi many times at wrestling. And so the Prophet ﷺ allows them to have like a minor combat in front of him to display their strength and their abilities. And so they have a little bit of a scuttle, and Samura beats Rafi. And so the Prophet ﷺ allows Samura to stay as well. This is so interesting to see that these youngsters, they're so young in age, and they are so eager to stay and participate. It just makes you wonder, what are our 11-year-olds today doing, or our 14-year-olds, and would they be so eager to, to go and join the ranks in a battlefield or something like that. The only ranks I think our youth are eager to join are the ranks in video games, in which they have, in which they feel safe enough to join the ranks and fight, right? Unfortunately. And also it's interesting to compare these youngsters and this age group of young men, and compare their eagerness and their keenness to fight against the hypocrites, right? The hypocrites, they leave halfway, and they just say that if we were certain that this fight is going to take place, we would have come. But we know that no fight is going to take place, and that's why we are just retreating. So these are just, excuses that they're making. But you can compare now, the enthusiasm that this, youth has compared to the hypocrites. And it's clear that it is connected to your iman. And like we mentioned last time, that you can't tell a mu'min from a munafiq when it comes to salah, when it comes to being an imam, when it comes to being a speaker or a scholar. So it's not in these situations that you can see the difference between a mu'min and a munafiq. The time that you see the thing that distinguishes a mu'min and a munafiq is the battlefield. And that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that, in the Quran, that he wouldn't leave the believers like this until he had, distinguished between who are the believers and who are the munafiqeen. Okay. Now, the Prophet ﷺ, he starts arranging and positioning the Muslim army, and he divides them into 3 battalions. So you have the Muhajirun, and you have the Ansar, and the Ansar are divided into the Aus and the Khazraj. Okay, so these are the 3 battalions. So for the Muhajirun, the standard is given to Musab ibn Umair. For the Aus, the standard is given to Usayd ibn Khudair. And for the Khazraj, the standard is given to Habab bin Mundhir. Okay, so he divides them into these 3 battalions, and these are you could say, the leaders of these 3 battalions. So you have Musab ibn Umair, Usayd bin Khudair, and Habab bin Mundhir. And as we said, when the Prophet ﷺ, he gets to Uhud, let's just show the screen again. Okay, so think it takes a few seconds, right? So that you guys can see the screen as well. And it's not just me. I hope you can see it now. So this is the enclave from where they are going to fight, right? So the army is sort of, you could say, lined up here, and their backs are towards the mountain, and they're facing the city. They're facing this way, right? And so as the Prophet ﷺ is, positioning them, he notices this weak area, like we said. And so he positions 50 of the Sahaba on this hill or little mount, right? And at that time, like I said, it was called Jabal Ainain, but today it's known more popularly as Jabal Rumah. And he positions them here, and he says something very important to them, which is reported in several places. And he says to them, he gives them these very clear instructions. Yeah, he says, protect our backs. If you see us being killed, don't come to our aid. And if you see us winning, do not join us. And he also said, if you see the vultures flying off with us, don't leave until I send you a message. And if you see us victorious over the enemy and trampling them underfoot, do not leave until I send you a message. So this is very clear, very clear, unequivocal instructions to not move from this mountain until they are given permission to, or given instructions directly from the Prophet ﷺ, right? He has very clearly said to them that if you see us winning, you don't move. If you see us losing, you don't move. If you see the enemy retreating and running away, you don't move. If you see our bodies being eaten by vultures, you don't move. So he's given them, very clear instructions that under no circumstances are they supposed to move, because the Prophet ﷺ, he knew this is the weakest, point. And so they have to stay at their positions no matter what, because the Prophet ﷺ knew that the enemy could outflank the Muslims from this side or from the rear, if this position was left unattended. So it was a very critical position to hold on to, and that's why he gives such clear and precise instructions to them, right? That they're not supposed to move no matter what. Of course, the Prophet ﷺ is also teaching the Sahaba about obedience, about ta'ah, right? So you don't use your own ijtihad or your own, you don't sort of take decisions into your own hands now and say, well, it looks like, it would be pretty safe for us to, move now. Or so he's basically teaching them that you don't take these things into your own hands. You do as you are told. So they have been told not to move, and even if they, from their from their perspective, if they think, that it's safe enough for us to move now, they're still not supposed to move, right? Okay. Now, so the battalions have been decided, the positioning more or less has been done, and now the Quraysh have come and they have camped as well. And let me just show you where they have camped. Okay, so the Quraysh are sort of in this area here. Okay, so this is where they camp, and it's from here, like I said, you see this tip of the mountain range and this tip of the mount where the Prophet ﷺ has placed the archers. It's this opening where the combat actually takes place. So it's a very narrow area. So they've camped here, and they're going to send their battalion this way, and the Muslims are here, and they're going to come out through this way. So what Abu Sufyan does, always trying to, use some kind of, you could say, it's almost like snidiness. It's not even so much strategy, but this is what he, uses to try and overcome the threat of the Muslims, right? Because even though their number is so small, but they are still such a threat because of their enthusiasm, because of their commitment, and the Quraysh know that. So they are trying somehow to outflank the Muslims, even though they're so much greater in number than the Muslims. So what he does is he sends a messenger to the side of the Ansar, and this messenger goes and tells them, "Leave us alone to fight with our cousin, because we have no purpose in fighting you." So he's basically telling the Ansar that go back to your homes. We don't have any enmity or any misgivings towards you. We just want to fight with our cousin, and that's all we are here for. So, we don't have any problem with you. You guys are safe. You can just go back. The Ansar are, of course, very, upset and angry to hear this, because first of all, this is not the attitude of the Quraysh from the beginning, right? When the Prophet ﷺ first moves to Medina, they sent, they threatened the Ansar, right? And they said that they would kill their men, they would enslave their women, they would take their money if the Ansar agreed to give shelter to the Prophet ﷺ. So they were threatening to fight with the Ansar when the Ansar accommodated the Prophet ﷺ. Now they're saying, oh, we don't have any problem with you, we just want to fight with the Prophet ﷺ. So what you can see here, his strategy is to divide and conquer, right? Because as long as they are united, as long as they are all together in it, they're strong. But if he can break them or into fragments, then it will just be easier to defeat them, because he will still fight with all of them, but he can do it in bits, and that will just be easier for him to take them all out. So that's his strategy. And you can see that even today, this is the strategy that the disbelievers employ, right? So they will say to the Muslims, we don't have a problem with you, we don't have a problem with Islam, we just have a problem with extremists, or they'll name them radicalists or terrorists or whatever you want to call them, right? And that's the only thing we have a problem with. But if you've heard the saying that I died the day that the white bull died, or I was killed the day the white bull was killed. So when you get fooled into thinking that they're not after you, they're not after Islam, they're just after a small group within you, it's just a matter of time until that extends all the way up to you. So this divide and conquer strategy is old, and it's been used in the past, and it continues to be used today. And so this is what he was trying to do. He was trying to break them up and just make his job easier, and the Ansar didn't agree to that. Okay, so then he tries. Well, there's there's a leader who used to be one of the leaders of the Aus. His name was Abu Amr al-Rahib, Abu Amr the priest. And he was the leader of the Aus until they accepted Islam. And when they accepted Islam and the Prophet ﷺ comes to Medina and Islam spreads through Medina, he doesn't want to be part of it. So he moves to Mecca and he starts to live amongst the Quraysh. And so now when they come to battle, Abu Amr al-Rahib, he comes along with the Quraysh to fight. And he says to Abu Sufyan, he says, give me a chance. My people love me, and if I speak to them, they will listen to me. So he was well loved by the people when he used to be their leader in the days of Jahiliyyah. So now when he goes into their ranks to negotiate with them and to speak to the Ansar, he says to the Quraysh, he says, I will go and convince my people not to go and fight with Muhammad. Right? So he was very confident that they would listen to him. But when he goes to them, they say to him, they start cursing him, they start saying, bad things to him, and they change his name and they say to him, you are Abu Amr al-Fasiq. Okay, you're not Abu Amr al-Rahib, you are Abu Amr al-Fasiq. So basically they are very upset with him and they tell him, that he is evil and, they're not going to listen to him and that they don't really care for him or what he has to say. And so he comes back out to the Quraysh and he says, some evil has befallen my people after I left. And of course, it's not any evil that has befallen his people. It's just that they have become Muslim now and they are, working according to Islam. And so they're not willing to listen to him because he was, of course, not interested in Islam and he continued to, stick to his pagan ways. So these two attempts to disunite the Muslims by the Quraysh both fail, right? So they didn't listen to the messenger and they weren't interested in what Abu Amr had to say either. Abu Amr al-Rahib or al-Fasiq, as the Sahaba named him, he has a son who is on the side of the Muslims and he will actually be killed during this battle. Does anybody know what his son's name is? It's a very famous companion. Or does anybody want to guess? Okay. The name of his son is Hamdala. Was someone going to say something? And I just gave it away. Okay. Anyway, you've all heard of Hamdala, right? Al-Ghasil bil-Malaika. So that was the son of Abu Amr al-Rahib. And so you can see how different father and son are, right? So he is on the side of the disbelievers, and his son is on the side of the Muslims. Okay. All right. Okay. Now, as the Prophet ﷺ is preparing to go into battle, and we will end with this story, inshallah. The Prophet ﷺ, he holds up a sword in his hand, and he says, "Who will take this from me?" So many of the Sahaba, they volunteer, and they volunteer to take the sword from him. And then the Prophet ﷺ, he qualifies this statement and he says, "Who will take this sword along with its rights?" And And so what he's trying to say is that don't just take the sword, but the person who takes the sword has to give this sword its right. So the Sahaba, they asked the Prophet ﷺ, what are the rights of this sword? And so the Prophet ﷺ says, for you to strike the enemy with it till it bends. And now this is a serious request, and this is it's a tough request. It's not something that anyone can just take and just, just run into the battlefield. And so after hearing this, the Sahaba, they start thinking again. And Abu Dujana comes forward and he says, I will, O Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, I will fulfill its rights. And so the Prophet ﷺ, he hands over the sword to Abu Dujana. Ibn Ishaq says, he took the sword from Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and he took out the red headband and he put it on. And this was a habit of Abu Dujana, that when he would go into the battlefield, or when he would go into fight, he would wrap this red headband around his head. And so he does that, and he starts strutting between the two lines, between the battalion lines. And the Prophet ﷺ, he said, this or that is the way of walking that Allah dislikes, except in circumstances like this. So walking with pride and arrogance and strutting, without any humbleness, this is something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not like, except in this situation, when you're about to go into a battlefield and you are trying to display your strength and your confidence. So this is the only time that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala likes for a person to behave like this or to walk like this. Okay. So a believer does not have to walk. A believer walks with humbleness, but humbleness should not be mixed or confused with weakness, right? So you should have humbleness, and you should have humility in the way you walk, in the way you carry yourself, but that does not mean that you are weak. It just means that you are not arrogant or proud, right? And whatever you are because of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it is not because of anything that you owe to yourself. Like Ali radiallahu anhu, he said that when the Prophet ﷺ would walk, he would walk as if he was coming downhill. So you can see that his gait or his walk was firm, but it was not arrogant, right? Okay. So Abu Dujana, he takes the sword and he walks this way, and Imam Ahmad said he did take it, meaning he did take the sword and give it its rights, and cleaved a path with it through the middle of the polytheists in order to bend it. He wreaked havoc in the ranks of the enemy. And Abdullah ibn Zubayr, who also wanted the sword, and so he is a bit jealous, but he's watching Abu Dujana, and he's trying to see how does Abu Dujana give the sword its right. And he narrates a story of a scene that he witnessed on the day of Uhud, and he said, every man who met Abu Dujana was killed. Among the enemy there was one man who executed every man he wounded. So meaning, on the side of the enemy, Abdullah ibn Zubair notices there's this one man, and he's getting rid of everyone that he comes into combat with. And he says, if that man meets a Muslim, the Muslim is dead. So this mushrik and Abu Dujana came very close to one another, and I prayed to Allah to bring them together, and they did meet. They exchanged a couple of blows. The mushrik then struck at Abu Dujana, who defended off the blow with his shield, which trapped the man's sword, and then Abu Dujana struck and killed him. So you can see that Abu Dujana is giving this sword its right, and he is confident, and he knows what to do and how to do it. And if we go back to our map, 1 second. Okay, I hope you can see it now, because I think it takes a few seconds for it to come up. But like we said, that it's this small area which is open for combat. And the way Imam Ahmad says, that he cleaves the way with this sword. It's almost as if, he starts here and he goes deep into the heart of the enemy, and he is just taking people out. It is also said that the three people who engaged most bravely in combat during Uhud were Hamza radiallahu anhu, Abu Dujana, and Ali radiallahu anhu. Okay. So, okay, going back to the story, Ka'b ibn Malik narrates a story. He says, at that point when he's narrating the story, we aren't sure who he's talking about. And he says, I then saw one mushrik, heavily armored, was striking the Muslims hard and saying, come on, you sheep gathering for slaughter. But then I saw one Muslim, fully armored, waiting for him, and I went on over behind him to compare the Muslim from the mushrik. So Ka'b ibn Malik, he's just spectating and watching from far, and he just wants to see what happens in this combat between the two. And so Ka'b is, you could say, he's sizing them both up to see what's going to happen, who's going to win, who's going to be who's going to be more skilled in this combat. And he says, the latter, meaning the mushrik, was better in equipment and form, and I kept on waiting until they met. So the mushrik, he is bigger in size and he is better equipped. He has better equipment. And so he's waiting for this man who's covered on the Muslim side and the mushrik for them to meet. And then he said, I kept on waiting until they met. The Muslim then struck the unbeliever a blow with his sword on his shoulder. The sword came right down through to his thigh. So basically, he struck him on his shoulder, and he went all the way through his torso and came out the other end at the bottom through his thigh, right? And he basically tore this man's body apart, and that is strength, right? That is power. And he cut this man into two, and Ka'b said, then the Muslim uncovered his face and he said, what about that, Ka'b? I'm Abu Dujana. So he knew that Ka'b ibn Malik is watching, and he's spectating and seeing what's going to happen in this combat. And Abu Dujana is a brave warrior, and he's proud of being able to do that for the sake of Allah, right? And so he removes his face covering and he says to him, what about that, Ka'b? I'm Abu Dujana. So he's telling him that it's me who's just done this, right? And so, this was a man who was going to give this sword its right. Okay. Just to go back a little bit, the combat starts with what they call a mubaraza, right? Which is a one-on-one. Just like it happens at the time of Badr, the same thing happens at Uhud. And in this situation, it is somebody called Talha ibn Abi Talha, who is from the side of the Quraysh, and he is from the Banu Abdul Dar, and he comes out and he says, who's going to fight me? And Ali ibn Abi Talib, who is from Banu Abd Manaf, he comes out and he agrees to go into this one-on-one combat with Talha. The Banu Abdul Dar, does anybody know what was their responsibility or what was the privilege given to them? Because remember, all the tribes had certain responsibilities, right? Some of them were responsible to feed the pilgrims, give them to drink. Some of them had the keys of the Kaaba. Do you know what the responsibility of the Banu Abdul Dar was? Anyone? Okay. So their responsibility was carrying the banner in the battlefield. Yeah. So anyway, so they come into this combat, and Talha is fully dressed in armor. Okay, and of course he's well equipped. Ali radiallahu anhu has got no armor. He just has his sword. And so when they come into combat, Talha, as he tries to strike Ali radiallahu anhu uses his shield. And so the sword hits the shield. And he immediately strikes him below his armor on his legs. And so he cuts his legs. And as he cuts his legs, of course, Talha falls. And as he falls and his armor flies off, Ali radiallahu anhu is about to stab him or to strike him again and of course kill him. And as he's about to do that, Talha requests and begs for mercy, and he reminds him that they are cousins because they are third cousins. And he says to him, just spare my life because I'm your relative. And so Ali radiallahu anhu leaves him, but eventually he dies because of his wounds anyway. So that's how the battle commences, and then they go into full combat. Of course, the narrations are, far and few. So we have to put things together to understand how, in what chronological order this fight actually takes place. But, we try our best to, fit these stories together and assume that this would have happened before this happened, and so on and so forth. So with that, inshallah, I will stop here. I just also wanted to mention that just like the Prophet ﷺ had divided the Muslims into the 3 battalions, the Muhajirun, the Aus and the Khazraj, similarly the Quraysh, they had divided themselves as well. So the leader in this battle was Abu Sufyan, right? And then their right flank was headed by Khalid ibn Walid, and their left flank was headed by or led by Ikrimah ibn Abu Jahl. Okay, just for you to have information about that as well. Inshallah, next time we will continue and talk about a little bit more in detail of how the battle takes place and what happens and how the initial victory is taking place. Because at this point, the Muslims, they see the women, they see the jewelry on the women's legs as they are fleeing the battleground. And the fact that they can see women and the jewelry on their legs, because the women are right at the back of the ranks. So you can imagine that if the women are fleeing, there must be chaos in front of them, right? And they have actually gathered their garments to run. So that's how they can see the jewelry on their legs. And so this is all just symbolic and indicative of how badly the battle has taken a turn for the Quraysh. So they are being defeated pretty badly, and so they are running. But like I said, we will continue inshallah next time, so as not to prolong this any further. If you have any questions, I'll take them. Otherwise, Jazakallah Khair for joining us, and may Allah reward you all and bless your time and your put barakah in this attendance, inshallah. Make it a source of expiation for us all. Barakallah fikum. Okay, wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Alright, inshallah. So if there are no questions and if that was clear, I hope inshallah you all benefited from this. And I hope the map is helping, because sometimes it's difficult to understand and imagine and picture, how was Uhud covering them all, and, how was this happening or how was that happening, and even the routes, to how Badr took place and all of that. So I hope that that's helping, inshallah. It's giving you a bit of photographic understanding of what's happening as well. Okay, alhamdulillah, that's good, mashallah. So we'll use it again to next lesson as well, inshallah. Alright, inshallah. So Jazakumullahu Khairan wa subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. I'll see you all next week, inshallah. Alright then, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
وآخر دعواهم أن الحمد لله رب العالمين.